Danielle here from East Hands Youth Links, and today we are going to be painting with watercolor paints. First thing we're going to do is actually sketch out our picture of this little chickadee and a tree, and it's a winter scene, so we're going to make it look like it's falling snow. So we're actually going to use some salt in our painting today. So I have with me a pencil, I have a detail brush, and I have a large round. You can use a large square if you like, just for coverage. And then I have a medium round as well. I also have a toothbrush for painting as well. I have a palette here with my dried up watercolor paints. You can use liquid watercolor paints onto your palette and let dry and reuse again. If you don't have these type of watercolor paints, you can use the puck style watercolor paints, work just the same. I also have my blow dryer here, a cup of water, and a rag to wash my brush. So the first thing I want to do is sketch in his body, which is an oval shape here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to find where I want it on my drawing. And I am going to, excuse me, sketch in an oval of my chickadee here. So I'm going to put my chickadee right here on the branch. Okay. And then the next shape I want to put in is actually the chickadee's head, which is another oval shape. So I have the oval body here, and then I'm going to add the shape of his head, and I'm going to cut right into the other oval. Okay, and this is a little bit more rounded here, but that's fine. So it's more of a rounded shape than oval. So now I have two circular shapes for the body of the chickadee. Now I'm going to break it up a little bit. So you can see here we have a wing, which again is another oval shape, which cuts in a little bit into the head and a little bit into the body. So what I'm going to do is sketch in my oval shape for the wing. And it's just a basic sketch just to kind of mark off where the elements of my picture are going to be. And you can see here I'm drawing with the side of my pencil so I can get it nice and light. Now the next thing I want to do is put in the highlight on his face, because he has this white kitty. So what I'm going to do is right here at the top of the face, I'm just going to put a curve and then start at the same spot again and curve again. So it's almost like it's cut right out. And at the top of that point, we're going to put in his little tiny triangle beak. Okay. So right now it just looks like one big oval, circular head, and we have an oval wing, and then I kind of split his face here where the white's going to be. And right above that white, right about here, is where his eye is going to be. Now, I want to erase some of these lines because I don't want to have a lot of lines showing up through my painting. So I'm just going to erase in here where I don't need anything. Okay. But the other thing I want to do will erase the inside out. I want to actually shape my shapes that I drew into one shape. As you can see here, I'm just kind of curving. And this guy's all fluffed up, so I want him to look nice and fluffy around. Okay. And this is the curve of his face here. It got cut off by his wings, which are coming right up inside here. Okay. All right, so I have marked off where his eye goes, his wing, his belly, his head, and his beak. Now the next thing I want to do is put in this branch. So I want the branch to come down from his legs. So what I'm going to do, so I know that I have his legs sitting right on the branch, I'm going to just put a 1, 2 tick for his legs. I'm not going to put his feet in, but now that I know where his legs are going to position, I know where I can put the branch. So the branch is going to come out. I have to make it perfect shape. Making mine have a little bit of a bend. And it comes closer to me. Okay. So now I know where the sticks of his legs are. We can kind of just sketch in his little claws, which is 1, 2, and then 1 down the back. Okay, 1, 2. So we have his little claws in. All right, so also you see in this image, there's a very faint looking tree in the background here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly sketch that in. So it's just going to lightly come up behind him. It's a very light sketch, not a lot of detail. We have in his body, head, wing, branch he's sitting on, and this branch that's coming up in behind him. Now I'm just going to mark off here. You can see his face cuffs up right here. So I'm just going to scoop it around because we're going to leave so you know that the top of his head is black and white. Now again, go in with your eraser and erase the lines you don't need. And if you drew really, really dark, you want to go in with your eraser and very lightly scuff over top just to lighten up your lines a little bit, because when you're painting, you want to hide your sketch. You only want to be able to see the paint come through. Okay. Making sure I get all of my eraser marks off here. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to start with my large round brush, and I'm going to start in my background. Now my background, it's a snowy day, so I'm going to do a little mix of black and a little bit of blue because I want my sky to look like a night sky. So I have lots of paint here on my palette that's dry. I'm just going to dip my brush in water and show you that I just can reactivate it very easily. Okay. The thing with watercolor paints, the more water, the lighter the color. We are going to actually just take this large brush and I'm going to paint just water all over my background, my sky, okay, all around my chickadee. It's all right if you get some on your chickadee, but I'm just painting the background. I'm not painting the chickadee or the tree in the back or my tree in the front here. So just your background, I'm just brushing on flat water. And then I'm going to dip in and I'm going to try to work really quickly here and just grab some black. Now I want to brush my black paint. See how light that is? Just a little. Brushing black, and I'm also going to get some blue. I want it to look a little cooler. Okay. I'm working very quickly. Not worrying if I get a little all right, now that I have this color on, I'm very quickly going to just grab some salt. And I'm using pickling salt here because I want some bigger flakes. I'm just going to drop it onto my wet painting. Now you need to make sure that it's still wet. Just dropping on my salt. And again, if it's already dried up, this isn't going to work. So make sure that it's still a little damp in the background with your color. Okay. Now, I want this to dry up really, really good before I keep going. So what I'm going to do, just to speed up the process, I'm just going to pull out my blow dryer here. All right, so that looks pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dust off my salt here. You might have to give a rub. I'm just going to push it to the side. You can see here it kind of left some little white dots, and that's the effect I was looking for because I wanted to make it look like snow in the far background. Okay, you want to make sure it's fully dry when you're rubbing this off or you will smudge. Okay, and just lightly dusting off the salt. So I get that really cool effect in the background. You can see as the salt hit the water and the paint, it like pushed out and created a really cool effect. All right, so I'm just making sure I get my salt off here, just pushing it to the side. All right, so still working in my background. The reason I wanted to have it nice and dry is because I want to do my tree in the background. Now, the reason I wanted it really dry for that is because when you paint wet to wet, it will bleed into each other. So I don't want my tree to bleed into my sky. So I'm now going to just grab some more black here. So I want to like a gray color. Okay. And I'm actually going to give a sharp brush. I'm just using my round tip brush here. And I'm just going to mark off the edge of my tree. All right. Now I'm going to grab a little bit of brown to mix with my black. And I'm using less water this time to get a darker color. Okay. I'm just going to the edge of my tree. Now I'm only doing this side because what I want to do here is I want to pull my color and I'm going to curve it this way. So again, it's like a brownie black I'm using. I'm curving it this way. And when I do that, I'm going to take my brush and very softly give it a bump. I want to make it look like there's some snow sitting on this branch that's far off in the distance here. So I'm just pulling it to one side, and I'm kind of leaving a lump there. Pulling my branch over. Use a little brown, a little gray. Just going around my chickadee. I'm all right if I come up a little bit close to it. And again, I'm leaving that little white streak up the side. A little bit more black. And I'm painting side to side because I want to give that branch a curved feeling. And when I'm going up, I'm actually going to use my brush here. You can use a smaller brush if you like. And I'm just going to use that light color because I want to make it look like it's got a couple little twigs coming off it in the distance. Nice and light color. Just add a little bit more detail in the background. And it's really light because I want it to look like it's further away. Okay. All right. Now, I want to make this snow pop up that's sitting on top of this back branch a little bit more. So now I'm going to put a little bit more of a layer on my sky and my background. So I'm going to grab a little bit more of that black on my palette. blacky blue that I have going from my sky. And I'm just going to come to my background here, and I want it a little bit darker at the bottom. And I'm going to go right over top of my branch and stuff. I'm not going to worry. By putting another layer, I'm getting a little bit more depth. See here that I can get that sky a little bit more. Okay. Now, I want to make sure that it looks really snowy. So, like we did the first time, I have it wet. I'm working quickly here. And I want to make sure it's darker at the bottom and it gets lighter as it rises up to the top. Okay. And I'm going to put another layer of salt. Make sure it's wet. I'm pretty happy with how dry that is. If you want to just give it a wipe and dust off your salt again.
Put the needle on the record.
I'm going to use just my medium-sized brush here, and I'm going to start laying in some base colors for my chickadee. Now, I'm almost out of black on my palette here, so I'm just going to load my palette up with a little black watercolor paint. Again, I'm using liquid. If you have puck paint, that is fine too. All right, and I also have some brown on my palette. Mine's dried up here, so I'm just going to activate it with some water. And I have a little red as well. So I have like a red and brown. I'm just kind of mixing together. So I want to have a reddish brown branch. And I'm going to brush in the branch up closer. Now again, if you want this to be closer to you, you want it more vibrant in colors. So you want less water this time to make it darker and more paint. So I'm just going to brush in my reddish brown branch here. Okay. Again, I'm just painting in my base color right now. I'll go back and add more detail as we go. Okay. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. Looks fine. Now, I'm gonna go in and I have some yellow ochre here, which is like a mustardy yellow color. And I'm gonna use that yellow to put on the underside part of his belly here, under his wing. Okay, and I'm just lightly getting my brush loaded up with water. As you can see, you don't need a lot of paint. Little water in your brush, a little bit of yellow, and I'm just gonna go under his wing here. And I'm going to actually paint with the tip of my brush in little flicks right under his wing. And you can see it's light. Some of it's coming off onto the sky, and that's good. A little bit more paint, less water. And I'm just doing little flicks Now the thing with watercolor paints, it's layers and layers. So don't worry about getting a vibrant, bright color right off the start, because it takes a couple layers to get that. Now I'm just gonna put a couple little flicks up here in his main wing, okay? And then I'm gonna wash my brush. Now I'm gonna get my main base of the black of his head. So again, a little water, activate your black. You don't want a whole lot of water or it's going to bleed all over your page. You're doing smaller details, so just wipe your brush on the side of your palette. Now we're going to fill in under his head here, underneath that line we made, some black. Okay, and the cap of his head. It's all right if you go into the eye, okay? And you can see it's light right now, and that's fine. I want it to be lighter because we're going to build it up in layers. I can put the first base of his beak in as well. Again, I'm using the very tip of my brush just to fill in here. And I'm doing little flicks just to kind of give the illusion of some little feathers fluffed up here, okay? You see now as I'm going over this again, it's darkening up even more. Okay, so I have his head, little yellow under his back wing. Now I'm going to do some on his wings. Now his wings are going to start right at the top here, and I'm going to flick out. And then I'm going to stop. First part of his wings stop here. Now the next part of his wings, I'm going to come out and curve. Okay, so I have flicked out at the top, curved ones here, and I'm leaving little blocks of white. Then for the back part of his wing, I'm going to come right out and straight out to the end. Okay, I'm going to imagine that his other wing is cutting in right back here, so I'm going to crisscross in the other way. All right, so again, we have the base of his wings started. Now I want to put some highlight in the white of his belly. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just get a really watered down black. So I barely have any paint, and I'm very lightly. It's a little bit darker than I like. So all you have to do is just take your napkin or your paper towel. You can dab it and pull it back so it's not as dark. And I'm just going to give a couple little white flicks where his belly is with some black here just to give some highlight, and up here where the white is for some highlight. Okay, I'm going to take my brush here and fill in my wings just a little bit more, just with water on my brush, but I want to leave some white showing. All right. All right, so I'm going to do another layer. So brush again, more black, and as I go, it's getting darker and darker. And leaving some of the lighter black to give them some depth. Filling it in just a little bit more. Now, I'm going to put his eye in, but I want to leave some white around. So I'm just putting a little black circle right here. Okay? Just for now. And paint some black. So again, we're just creating some layers here. Right, put a little black coming down into his yellow thumb. Again, another little bit of a layer on his wing. Wash my brush out. Now I'm just going to get some of that reddish brown, and I want to put just a little bit into the yellow on his underbelly here. And I'm going to put a little bit in his wing. Just a little bit of this reddish brown color. And I can get more of the yellow ochre, just give it a little bit more depth. A little bit more. I'm just using the very tip of my brush. If you want to use a smaller detail brush, go right ahead. It's puffed up little chickadee. Okay. Now I'm also going to do his legs. Now his legs are a black. So I'm just going to, again, use my brush, make sure I don't have too much water in it, so I can just brush in where his little legs are. And I'm just doing the shape of them for now. I'm not worried about detail yet. Feel like you've got too much on there. Again, you can always wet it and pull it back with your paper towel or your napkin. I'm going to go back in with my brush, and I'm going to get some more of my reddish brown. This time I'm going to go a little bit darker. And I'm going to start at the base of my branch, and I'm going to curve up and at the top and come down with some brown, maybe a little black mixed in. Okay. Maybe a little yellow ochre, just to give my branch a little bit more detail. You can put some little spikes or twigs coming off of it. Painting with watercolors is a lot of weight for layers to dry so that you can add on top. Reminder that I want this to look like it's coming at me, so I'm going to make it darker when it comes to this kink here, and then as it goes back it's going to get a little bit lighter. A little bit of highlights of white on my branch. Now the thing with using white with watercolors, it's going to mix with whatever you have. You can't cover white over top, so it's just going to give a lighter version of the color underneath, especially if it's damp underneath. Okay. And I'm going to come up to my Chickadee and I'm going to start mainly just using black, just with a damp, tiny detail brush. So again, another layer. I'm going to curve my feathers right around his eye here, but again, I'm leaving a tiny little white rim around the outside of his eye so that eye pops out a little bit. And I'm brushing on little flicks for his face here. Okay. This is where we can flick in some little flicks to make it look like more depth into his feathers. Starting to pop out a little bit more. Another layer of black. And I'm just using a photo as a guide here. His little wings are fluffed up here. Again, you can see how the layers are popping through, and this top one is the darkest. You can see my black all the way through. I'm doing some curves this way as well. The top of his wing before his wings start doing the curve down. Okay. Just following the lines that I already have there. All right. And then I'm going to go down to his feet again. So this time I'm going to use my detail brush to get right in there to do my detail. So I get his nice little claws in there. Okay, you can take a little bit of white, a little bit of highlight. I'm just doing little ticks up his leg here just to give a little detail into his feet. Separate his feet a little bit, so just a little white on top of the black. Again, if there's lots of water, it's going to bleed, but if you're using more paint than water, you'll be able to put a little bit of a layer over top. Okay. Now, I'm just going to go in with my brush here, and I'm going to get a little bit of white. In my brush. Go in and put a little bit of white highlights. Now you can see when you use white, you're not going to show up as much. You mainly, when you want white in watercolor, you need to use your background. Okay. This is just giving us a little bit of gray in there. Okay. A couple of spots I wanted a little gray. So like I said, when you paint with watercolors, if you want white, you have to leave the white visible. We're actually going to make this painting into a little bit of a mixed media piece. So we're actually going to use some white acrylic because we need detail brush and add some final little details with some white here. So I'm going to go into his eye. And like I said, I wanted a little bit of a white ring around his eye. So if you lost it, it's okay. Go back in. Put that ring back in. And then I'm also going to put a little bit of a highlight in this little guy's eye. Okay. Now again, if you put too much, grab a little black again. And we're going to go in, use our white, make sure your brush is dry, and go in and put a little bit more detail in. I want the white to come right up under his eye here. So I'm just going to pull it up a little bit.
Put the needle on the record.
Again, put as much detail into your bird as you like. I'm going to finish mine off by, I'm just going to take my white here. I'm going to put a couple dogs on top of that branch that's in the background here where we left it white, just to make it look like there's a little bit more snow on there. Again, add as much detail as you like. Put more branches on. So I'm going to put a little snow falling on top of my branches here. I'm going to put some snow over here as well, sitting on top of my branch. And right here. I'm not going to totally cover my branch in snow, but I just want to have a little bit of a scuff of snow sitting on top of my branches here. Okay. So it looks like I got some snow falling there. I have snow that looks like it's really far away. Now I want to make snow closer to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to use my toothbrush here. I'm just going to get it damp with water. Dip it in my rag. Scoop up some white acrylic paint. I'm going to take it in my hand out like this. Palm down, fold fingers over, thumb over top of the bristles, and then I'm going to turn my thumb. Then I'm just going to flick down on my painting. So I want to make it look like it's snowing all over my painting here, closer in the front. The harder you flick, the more paint daubs you get. And make it look really wintry. Okay. A bit more on there than I want it, so I'm just going to brush it away. Happy with everything. I'm happy with how my little chickadee in the winter snow looks. I'm going to slowly peel back my tape.